switched. There we go. Looks like we're recording.
I just hit the record button.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm Teresa Penbrook. Nice to see those of you who I know and nice to meet those of you who I don't. I'm the director of the Healthy Communities Research Group for GP Red, which is a nonprofit organization that works with health, recreation, land management agencies. I also am a consultant for Barry Dunn for parks, recreation, libraries, and related amenities. And then I teach at the University of Colorado, Denver in the School of Public Affairs for Parks, Recreation, Emerging Professionals program. So involved with Shift and Active Living Conference and a variety of other things. So happy to be here and see you all. And I will pick Edith. Hi, Edith.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to Teresa. Nice to see you. I'm Edith Michelle. I'm with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Prince George's Parks and Recreation. I serve as the Research and Evaluation Manager for Parks and Recreation. And I haven't been a very active member, but I've really enjoyed, your presentations, and I often get nuggets of wisdom that I share here. So thank you for allowing me to participate. And I will pick Laura Ballas.
Hi, everyone. I am Laura Bayless. I'm a research scientist with the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation with our Louisville, Kentucky Center. I also work remotely, and I'm located in St. George, Utah. And I think this is the first meeting I've been on with this group. So looking forward to just learning what you all do. Sorry, I think I got to pick somebody. Who hasn't gone yet? Anna Christina, do you want to go next?
Thank you, Laura. And hi, everyone. I'm also new to the group. This is my first time. I'm currently interim associate dean for research at UMass Boston in the College of Nursing and Health Science. I'm also an associate professor in the Department of Exercise and Health Science. I'm joining the group per suggestion of a colleague. So I'm glad to be here. Sorry, I need to pick someone. Heather?
Is that me? Sorry. Hello, I'm Heather Devlin. I work in the Physical Activity and Health branch at CDC with David Brown, who most of you know a few of you, not everyone, and looking forward to learning more about this work group.
Guess maybe an intro to David. David, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, good morning or afternoon. I'm David Brown. I'm also with CDC in the Physical Activity and Health branch. I'm a technical monitor on PAPRN, so I know been on some calls with all of you, but also very passionate about parks and trails and nature-based interventions and outdoor recreation. So very excited to be with you today as I'm trying to get on as many calls as I can with this group. So looking forward to today. Thank you. And I just think, has James gone? James Sullivan?
I have not. Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. James Sullivan. It's my first time with this group. I am currently in the Masters of Urban Planning and Policy at University of Illinois, Chicago. I also work as an urban planner for the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. Love all things urban green space, so really excited to be here. I will hand it off to Samantha Moyers. I don't think we've heard from you.
Hi, I'm Sam Moyers. I'm a PhD candidate at WVU School of Public Health, and I'm the fellow for the PAPRN Rural Work Group. And I'll pick Christian.
Sam, why'd you do that to me? Hey, sorry I was a little bit late. Christian Abelto, School of Public Health at WVU, co-chair of the PAPRN Rural Work Group. Happy to be here. I'd rather be outside, but anybody else yet to go? Sorry, I jumped in late.
Hi, everyone. Christina McDonough from the Scott County Health Department in Iowa. And I think there might have been one or two other people that joined late, so potentially Diana.
Hi, my name is Diana Grace-Toussaint. I'm an associate professor at Brown University in behavioral and social sciences and epidemiology. And I apologize, I'm driving. My son had his 5th grade graduation this morning. And so I'm just sort of getting, work stuff going. And I am here because I recently joined the listserv, the NatureRx listserv with Don, who's giving our, giving his talk today. It was very excited to learn about this group. And I'm really looking forward to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be safe. And I think we have Tao.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tao Zhang. I'm a professor of kinesiology at the University of North Texas. And also I'm a director in our pediatric movement activity lab. So this summer we are doing multiple sessions of physical activity and nutrition, education, and intervention within the park. So that's why I think I can learn a lot from this group.
Well, wonderful. Welcome to everyone. It's so wonderful to see you all and to meet you. We've been, we'll do updates on our projects, and that'll give you a flavor of what sort of the things we're involved in. I guess we'll do that after our talk, but first we're here to welcome our speaker, Dr. Don Rakow. And Rich, you're going to do the introduction today, so take it away.
Sure. I'm just introducing Don Rakow, associate professor in the School of Integrative Plant Science Horticulture section at Cornell University. He's the director of the campus-wide NatureRx at Cornell Program and the nationwide Campus NatureRx network. The Campus NatureRx network, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a collaboration between researchers and Campus Nature program members that support campus mental and physical health through inclusive and equitable nature engagement. Dr. Rakow's research interests are in the areas of public garden management and the human benefits of time in nature for all age cohorts. So I'll just let Don, you can take over. I think you might be muted, Don. Sorry.
Unmute. And trying to get it into slideshow mode. Why is it not doing that? That's curious. Huh.
Can you click on slideshow, or is that not coming
Yeah,
up?
I have an overscreen that I'm trying to get rid of, which is blocking the, there. Now I just moved that, and now it should go into slideshow. Good. All right. Well, it's really a pleasure for me to share some recent developments in the area of how we humans benefit from time in nature. And I'm particularly pleased to have the opportunity to chat with these PAPRIN members about this topic because it relates so much to your work. So, as I'm sure many of you are aware, there is a wealth of information available today about the ways that we humans benefit from time in nature, not only from being physically active in nature, which I'll speak more about later, but even sitting and watching nature. And there even are studies that have shown that having a view of nature outside one's window can be beneficial. There was a paper done in 2017 by two wonderful colleagues, Bratman and Frumpkin, that categorized the benefits of spending time in nature and divided those into three categories: the psychological benefits, very familiar ones, such as reducing the levels of stress, anxiety, depression, even suicidal ideation, and then relating those to various physiological benefits, such as an improved ability to concentrate, improve memory, lower blood pressure, and then a number that would relate to the work that this group is doing, such as reduced obesity and diabetes, improved eyesight, improved immune function. And yes, there even are papers that relate time in nature or proximity to greater degree of green space to reduce mortality. Although even those papers admit that eventually we all are mortal. And these physiological benefits and psychological benefits then can play into improved behavioral or attitudinal approaches, such as greater happiness, greater life satisfaction, reduced aggression, and increased social connection. The connection that we humans have with nature has been described by the great and now late biologist E.O. Wilson in his book Biophilia. Wilson did not introduce the term biophilia, but he popularized it and proposed that the deep affiliation that we humans have with other life forms is deeply rooted in our biology. As he theorized, we as a species originated as hunter-gatherers, and as such, we must be aware of other organisms to survive. That was true of us in prehistoric times, and according to Wilson, carries into our current human relationship with nature, a relationship that admittedly many of us are often not aware of. Another book that I'd like to share with you that I'm very enthusiastic about was written by the psychoanalyst and active gardener Sue Stuart Smith, titled The Well-Gardened Mind. And in the book, Stuart Smith says early on, when we work with nature outside us, we work with nature inside us. It's why people feel more fully alive and energized in the natural world, why gardeners report feeling calmer and more vigorous, and why spending time in nature awakens the connection-seeking aspects of our human nature. And nature doesn't have to involve an extensive trip to the forest primeval. This is an overhead shot of Levittown, New York. This is where I grew up in the post-World War II era. And even though the houses were densely packed, there were plenty of opportunities for us to discover nature, including small woodlots and parks, and even our own backyards, which is where I first developed my love of gardening. And nature can be a social magnet, even in as dense an environment as New York City. As people relax and feel comfortable and supported in nature, the tensions and anxieties that cause road rage or street disputes melt away. And I have to say, this is particularly relevant as we as a society deal with the increasingly frequent mass shootings. Physiological stress is often monitored through salivary cortisol levels. The higher the cortisol level, the greater is the degree of stress. A number of studies have compared homogeneous cohorts of individuals who were asked to either spend a prescribed amount of time walking through a woodland or walking along an urban street. In every case that I have read, at least, cortisol levels declined significantly for the nature walkers, but not for the urban walkers. So later in the book, The Well-Gardened Mind, that I referred to earlier, Sue Stuart Smith states, being out and about on busy city streets means having to process a lot of auditory information and disrupts our ability to focus. Horns, sirens, alarms are all intended to put people on alert and keep them safe, but they drain our energy in trying to filter them out. Navigating a tide of people on a busy pavement is exhausting at the best of times. Everyone is going at a different pace. Both our physical and mental space is under threat in different ways in the city environment, unquote. And this relates to a theory first developed in the 1990s by these two individuals, Stephen and Rachel Kaplan. It's called attention restoration theory. I imagine many of you are previously familiar with it, and it focuses on the amount of time that each of us spends in directed attention, staring at computer screens, engaging in conversation, attending classes, reading books, or, as Stuart Smith was speaking about, making our way along busy urban streets. As a result of prolonged concentration, an individual may show signs of attention fatigue. Time in nature has been shown to relieve our directed attention, thereby improving cognitive function such as memory recall and the ability to perform concentration tasks. So we can think of our directed attention sort of like a muscle. And as we go out along a nature walk in a wooded environment, that muscle is relaxed and is able to thereby perform again. I want to spend some time talking about young people. Many psychological authorities now believe that the window of opportunity for the formation of bonding with the natural environment develops sometime during early to middle childhood, 8 to 12 years of age, and it requires regular integration with nature. As research by Kellert and others has shown, contact with nature in the middle childhood years occupies a surprisingly important role in a child's emotional responsiveness and social development. Yet a worrisome feature of our contemporary society is that many children experience nature through electronic devices or not at all. A new study I've come across from researchers at University College London found that the amount of time adolescents spend in wooded areas was associated with higher scores for cognitive development and a lower risk of emotional and behavioral problems. In a similar study among children living in urban environments, those who had everyday views of nature, so either a view outside an apartment window or being able to view nature from a classroom, performed better on tasks that measured working memory and impulse inhibition and selective attention than those with no regular views of nature. But we know that young people today show greater levels of stress and anxiety relative to a decade or two. There are multiple factors that are contributing to these trends, including increasing parental focus on performance over play, increased time in class with decreased recess and lunch periods, increased use of electronic technology in school and out, and young people favoring time indoors viewing screens over unstructured time outside. Habitual stress that develops in the middle childhood years can follow young people as they progress from childhood into college. A 2019 National College Health Assessment conducted by the American College Health Association found that 45% of respondents, so almost half, indicated that they had felt a high degree of stress in the previous 6 months. Similarly, the Center for Collegiate Mental Health in 2019 found that average rates of student self-reported anxiety and depression had increased over the past 8 years to the highest level ever. And finally, the 2019 annual survey from the Association of University and College Counseling Center Directors found that the most common mental health problems among treated students were anxiety at 59%, depression at 48%, and stress at 47%. And all of those statistics that I've just shared occurred before the COVID pandemic. The need to re-engage young people with the natural world was really brought into sharp focus back in 2005 when Richard Louv published his best-selling book, The Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. This seemingly novel call to arms had impact in schools and childcare programs across the country. But interestingly, this was not actually a new development. In the early 20th century, Anna Botsford Comstock, Liberty Hyde Bailey, and Louis Agassiz, when all three of them were at Cornell, spearheaded the nature study movement, which attempted to reconcile scientific investigation with personal experiences gained from interactions with the natural world, like making birdhouses. I love the motto that these scientists used for their nature study movement. It was study nature, not books. A pretty radical notion for the early 20th century. I also recently came across a fascinating paper titled NatureRx Reemergence of Pediatric Nature-Based Therapeutic Programs from the late 19th and early 20th centuries by Michelle Kondo and a colleague. In it, the authors argue that programs that engaged young people with the outdoors were popular 100 or 120 years ago as ways to address such childhood issues as being underweight, contracting polio, rickets, or tuberculosis. In contrast, today we're more concerned with the prevalence of obesity, high stress levels, and depression in children. Well, I'm particularly pleased to be addressing you PAPRIN members because you're a network that brings people together to create environments that maximize physical activity. But is all physical activity equally valuable? A 2013 study by Mitchell titled, "Is Physical Activity in Natural Environments Better for Mental Health Than Physical Activity in Other Environments?" concluded that, quote, "Physical activity in natural environments is associated with a reduction in the risk of poor mental health to a greater extent than physical activity in other environments," unquote. And another 2011 study by Kuhn et al. Titled, "Does Participating in Physical Activity in Outdoor Natural Environments Have a Greater Effect on Physical and Mental Well-Being Than Physical Activity Indoors?" concluded, quote, "Compared with exercising indoors, exercising in natural environments was associated with greater feelings of revitalization and positive engagement, decreases in tension, confusion, anger, and depression, and increased energy," unquote. In addition, quote, "Participants reported greater enjoyment and satisfaction with outdoor activity and declared a greater intent to repeat the activity at a later date," unquote. So, what can be the reasons for improved mental health and attitudes when exercising outdoors instead of an indoor environment? One answer may be phytoncides, which are chemical compounds that are produced by trees and other plants to protect them from various bacteria and fungal and insect attacks. And among the genera that we know produce these various phytoncides are pines, spruces, locusts, onions, and garlics. So the phytoncides, as they are given off, are taken in by our olfactory glands. More specifically, when these molecules are taken in through our nasal passages, they've been shown to not only reduce blood pressure by reducing sympathetic nerve activity, they also boost immune functioning by enhancing the synthesis of natural killer cells in our bodies. Even ordinary soil can benefit humans in ways that are just now being revealed. Mycobacterium vaccae, are non-pathogenic bacterial compounds commonly found in soils. When introduced into mice, they stimulated a newly discovered group of neurons, which in turn increased levels of serotonin. Those of you familiar with serotonin know that it's associated with feelings of well-being and happiness, and decreased levels of anxiety. So playing in the soil can be beneficial for us. In addition to identifying these properties in soils and plants that provide human health benefits, an exciting recent research thrust that has been an examination of the physiological and biological mechanisms that underlie these benefits. A researcher I greatly respect at the University of Chicago, Ming Kuo, has focused on the role of these human natural killer cells that I just mentioned. These NK cells are associated with boosting immune functioning and providing rapid response to viral infected cells, and in fact are now being investigated for their potential impact on COVID-19 virus. So more than 60 years ago, President John F. Kennedy understood the value of outdoor exercise, and he encouraged Americans, initially especially military officers, to complete strenuous 50-mile hikes. He was concerned that his fellow citizens were becoming increasingly unfit, quote, in a changing world where automation and increased leisure time replace the benefit of exercise and hard work, unquote. And that was in 1961. Well, of course, in the decades since Kennedy made that pronouncement, the obesity problem in this country has only gotten worse, as has our mental health crisis. So in 2022, what do we know about how active time in nature can address our physical and mental health needs? In a recent issue of Frontiers in Psychology, colleagues at Cornell and I conducted a scoping review of the literature around the question, what is the minimum time dose in nature to positively impact the mental health of college-age students and how to measure it? What we learned from 14 studies that we focused on is that as little as 10 to 20 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, can significantly reduce cortisol levels, blood pressure and heart rate, increase cognitive ability and recall, and improve overall mood. And if that works for 20-year-olds, it certainly should be effective for the rest of us too. In another study funded by the Cornell Atkinson Center, colleagues and I from Cornell, the Ithaca Children's Garden, and our local Tompkins County Department of Health, we examined both the logistical considerations and the potential impact of adding gardening or nature exploration periods to regular elementary school day curricula. We call our program Healthy Kids, Healthy Futures. We've just had a paper accepted to environmental education reviews in which we identify barriers in order to increase outdoor time in elementary schools. And that paper will be coming out shortly. Dr. Ming Kuo and her colleagues, who I mentioned earlier, are now conducting something called the Capacity to Learn study, which is examining the effects of schoolyard gardens on children's learning and academic achievement as reflected in standardized test scores, which seems to be so much a concern today. With this study, they are hoping to convincingly document that children learn more in green school settings as opposed to concrete-filled yards such as you see on the right. Through programs like Nature Explore, schoolyards are being transformed into living classrooms with the goal of helping nature become an integral and joyful part of children's daily learning. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, as a university faculty member, I am especially interested in applying these approaches to college students. So a number of years ago, colleagues at Cornell and I established the NatureRx at Cornell program, whose mission is to reduce stress and thereby increase physical and mental health in students through their engagement with nature, and to cultivate in students an increased appreciation of nature. And as Rich Christiana mentioned in his introduction, together with my colleague, Dr. Dorothy Ebus at William and Mary, we have developed a nationwide, plus Canada, campus NatureRx network, which now includes 43 colleges and universities of various sizes and types. While each school has a unique approach to getting students active in nature, we are all unified in a belief in the fundamental value of outdoor exercise. We put out a monthly newsletter and an annual full virtual symposium, and anyone on today's call who would like to join the Campus NatureRx network can simply email me. Finally, the former Director of Counseling and Psychological Services at Cornell, Dr. Gregory Eels, and I co-authored a text, NatureRx, Improving College Student Mental Health, in 2019. In this short book, we go in depth into the mental health crisis on US campuses and discuss the proven benefits of spending time in nature. We also provide a stepwise guide to developing a NatureRx program and profile for campuses that have developed NatureRx initiatives. We end by considering ways in which NatureRx programs will figure into the future of the American university. Well, we cannot deny that we are living in a time of turbulence, a time of social isolation, a time of environmental degradation. But through outdoor physical activities, including gardening, hiking, jogging, swimming, boating, and skiing, we can each improve our own well-being and serve as models to encourage those around us to do the same. So thank you very much for this invitation. And I would be happy at this point to answer any questions or to respond to any comments that any of you may have.
Great, thank you very much. That was great. Does anybody have any? I have a few questions I could ask, but I'll let some other folks ask any questions, comments you all have.
I wish that was my garden also. I second that. I did see a couple of hands up. James.
Yes, thanks, Don. That was great. I actually studied with Ming Kuo at University of Illinois, and she got me started in the whole green space field. My question was on, you mentioned a study about exercising in nature versus exercising in non-natural other settings. Do you know if that work, like if there were any common features among the non-natural settings that were like really impactful or were identified beyond just the broad concept of a natural set? There were any like features specifically?
Right. So I had cited two studies, a 2011 study by Kuhn et al. And a 2013 study by Mitchell. And by the way, I will send Jem all of the citations of the studies that I cited today. In those two studies, the indoor settings were typically gymnasium type settings, and the outdoor settings were typically wooded pathways.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure. David.
Yeah, Don, excellent presentation. I appreciate your focus on basically mind, body, and even social connectedness that's offered through these kind of interventions. As you indicated, the differences between nature's involvement and urban scape environments have differences in cortisol and other physiological and mental benefits. But one of the projects I've been working on for the last few years has been trying to focus on getting children who are especially in low income or under-resourced neighborhoods, often predominantly of minority, majority neighborhoods, out into nature, out on the trails, and trying to find programs that encourage that with little, not a lot of success. And I guess I was wondering, in terms of disparities and health equity, and having more children experience nature, if you had any thoughts or ideas about how to get children out into the natural environment. And you mentioned schools as one option, but I was just wondering if you had any other thoughts.
Yeah, I sure do. I'm really glad you asked that question because over the past 4 years, my colleague Dorothy Ebus and I conducted a Hatch multi-state study in which we were looking specifically at what are the primary barriers to greater use of parks and green spaces by young people of color, particularly in urban areas. And the results of that study were published in Children, Youth, and Environments, and I will include that in my list of citations that I'm going to send Jem. But in addition to that, Dorothy and I have contributed a book chapter for an upcoming book called The Power of Parks. And in that book chapter, rather than focusing on the barriers, which is the subject of that Children, Youth, and Environments paper, we focus on the most successful approaches for overcoming those barriers, what are typically called best practices. And we have found a number of best practices at nature serving sites that are specifically addressing traditionally underserved, under-resourced audiences. So that will be in that Power of Parks book chapter that I've just been reassured is coming out by the end of this calendar year.
That's fantastic. I just gave a poster on this topic last week at the American College of Sports Medicine, and I wish I had you in the loop all along on this, but so I'll try and touch base with you offline and follow up on some of this.
Please do dr14@cornell.edu.
Thank you.
And let me mention one more thing quickly and then go on to Edith's question. I've been working for the past few years with a colleague at University of Connecticut, Laura Brown, and a fantastic outdoors person and nature advocate named James Edward Mills, who's at University of Wisconsin. And together we've developed something that we call the Anti-Racism in the Outdoors Guide, or ARIDO Guide. And it is now housed on James Edward Mills' Joy Trip Project. But I recommend Googling Joy Trip Project and you'll see this ARIDO Guide there prominently.
Fantastic. Thank you. We're right in the middle of these issues. So good. This is really good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And please do be in touch. Okay. Edith, you've been waiting patiently.
Yes, I really enjoyed your presentation, and
thank you.
You know, I enjoyed kind of understanding a little bit more technically, but in terms of providing practical advice to my colleagues in Parks and Recreation, it sounds like the Power of Parks. Your book might have some, but is there anything you can offer now? We are seeing increased numbers of requests by our patrons for camps that are outdoors, and fewer of the indoor activities are sort of being embraced. And so I think we need to build on this post-COVID momentum that has kind of elevated everybody's appreciation of the outdoors. So is there any practical advice you give us? Schools are already asking us to do more, not field trips, but to either bring some of our sort of creatures and stuff to them or inviting them to our spaces. But is there any other advice that you would give practical Parks and Recreation professionals?
I would never want to say, Edith, that there is a positive side to COVID, but it has been encouraging to see the increased use of outdoor green spaces by so many people and by the increased valuing of our green spaces. So I have a number of recommendations, and I'll preface it by saying they're easier for me to rattle off than they are to actually implement. But such things as placing pocket parks closer to where people actually reside so that transportation and physical barrier problems can be overcome. We've built this fabulous network of interstate and other highways, but often those can be a true barrier between an apartment complex and where a park actually is located. So that's one. Secondly, actually speaking to and engaging residents you're trying to reach to find out what park facilities they truly want and need so that the park can reflect those needs. Thirdly, making sure that the park staff represent the diversity of the surrounding community and speak whatever languages residents of those communities use, making sure that signage is bi or trilingual. Making sure that parks are properly maintained. That sounds like one of those duh kind of statements, but nobody wants to go into a park where there's broken glass and trash and even worse, needles. So just the maintenance of parks can make a huge difference. And then making sure the park is open in the hours when people are actually available to utilize them. So those are a few, these are some of the things that we cover in that Power of Parks chapter.
Thanks very much. Great
You're
list.
very welcome.
Just real quickly, the Community Preventive Services Task Force, I think most people on the call probably are familiar with the new recommendation that's just been released that I think directly ties into what you're talking about, Don. So we could possibly use some of the things you're talking about to promote that recommendation in terms of implementation and dissemination. So I appreciate those insights also.
That would be fantastic. Well, I see that we're just about up to the hour. We might have time for one more quick question. Great, thank you, Jeanette. And if we don't have one more question, it's been a pleasure and an honor being able to share some thoughts with all of you, both those of you who I already know and those of you who are new to me. So thank you for this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rakow. We really appreciate it. I don't think we have a whole lot of time for updates. I don't know. And I'm sorry, Jem, I didn't have you introduce yourself. You're our work group fellow. We wouldn't all be here without you. So can you take a second to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks everyone for your continued participation. I'm the Parks and Green Space Fellow for PAPRIN. I'm a Master of Public Health student.